Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and seeing one headline on every screen across Europe. A Russian drone has entered NATO airspace. This time, investigators believe it wasn't an accident. NATO fighter jets are already in the sky. European leaders are in emergency meetings. And suddenly, one question is being asked across the continent. How far can Russia push NATO before something goes terribly wrong? Because the most dangerous conflict in Europe may not begin with tanks crossing a border. It could begin with something much smaller: a drone, a cyber attack, a damaged undersea cable, or an incident that nobody immediately wants to take responsibility for. And here's the frightening part. Some of these things are no longer purely hypothetical. Europe has already experienced dangerous airspace incidents connected to the wider war in Ukraine. So what happens if the next incident is clearly deliberate? Would NATO retaliate? Would America get involved? Or would both sides step back before the situation becomes something nobody can control? We're going to follow that scenario, step by step. And the answer may be very different from what you expect. Now imagine the incident has happened. A drone has entered NATO airspace. It has been intercepted, and investigators now believe it was deliberately sent there. The first reaction would probably not be to launch missiles at Russia. The first question would be, what exactly happened? Where did the drone come from? Who launched it? Was it carrying weapons? Was it collecting intelligence? And most importantly, was Russia directly responsible? That investigation could involve military radar, satellite imagery, electronic intelligence, and information from several NATO countries. Because before NATO makes a major military decision, it needs to know what it is responding to. And this is where the situation becomes complicated. If the evidence is uncertain, responding too aggressively could create a crisis that nobody wanted. But if the evidence is overwhelming, doing nothing could send a completely different message. It could tell Russia that NATO is willing to tolerate repeated provocations. And that's where the real dilemma begins. Because NATO would have to find a very difficult balance, strong enough to show that its territory cannot be challenged without consequences, but careful enough to prevent one incident from turning into a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia. Now imagine the next incident happens only a few days later. This time, another drone enters the airspace of a NATO country. But this one is different. It is detected early. Fighter jets are scrambled. Air defenses go on alert. And suddenly, European governments are asking a much bigger question. Is this a pattern, or is someone deliberately testing how quickly NATO will react? For countries on NATO's eastern flank, this isn't just a theoretical question. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. These countries are much closer to Russia and Belarus than most people in Western Europe realize, so their reaction would likely be immediate. More aircraft, more surveillance, more troops, more air defense systems, and NATO would probably increase its military presence across the region. But here's the problem. Every additional aircraft, every military exercise, every troop movement also increases the possibility of misunderstanding. Russia could see NATO's movements as preparation for an attack. NATO could interpret Russian movements as preparation for another incident. And now both sides are watching each other, waiting for the next move. This is where a dangerous cycle can begin. One side increases its readiness, the other side responds. Then the first side responds again. Nobody necessarily wants a war, but both sides are becoming more prepared for one. And sometimes, that is exactly how a crisis becomes difficult to control. Now let's bring America into the picture. Imagine you're watching all of this from Washington. The president receives an emergency briefing. NATO allies are asking for more intelligence. European countries are requesting additional air defense support. And American military planners begin preparing different options. But here's something important. American involvement does not necessarily mean American soldiers immediately fighting Russian troops. Modern warfare is much bigger than that. America could provide intelligence, satellite information, cyber capabilities, aircraft, air defense systems, logistics, and additional forces positioned in Europe. But every move would have to be carefully calculated, because Russia is not just another military power. It is a nuclear-armed state. And the United States is also a nuclear power. That means both sides would understand the consequences of allowing the situation to spiral out of control. So the objective would not simply be to show strength, it would be to show enough strength to protect NATO without creating a direct war between two nuclear powers. And while governments are making those decisions, ordinary people would begin noticing something else: the economy. Energy prices could move sharply, financial markets could react, airlines could change routes, businesses could delay investments, and governments could suddenly find themselves spending billions more on defense. A crisis in Eastern Europe wouldn't need to reach New York, London, Paris, or Berlin physically to affect the people living there, because in today's world, a military crisis can become an economic crisis surprisingly quickly. But now I want to hear from you. If you were a NATO leader and another serious incident happened tomorrow, would you respond with military force, or would you do everything possible to avoid a direct war with Russia? Tell me what you would do in the comments, and if you want to see what could happen next, subscribe. Because in the next video, we're going to take this scenario one step further.